Your Excellency Prime Minister Somdet Teisho Hun Sen, Director General Roberto Acevedo, distinguished ministers, other excellencies on the dais, honorable ambassadors, and also ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is a privilege and an honor to receive His Excellency Somdet Teisho Hun Sen, the Prime Minister of Cambodia, at the WTO for the Aid for Trade Global Review 2019. On behalf of the entire WTO membership, I would like to extend to you a very warm welcome. And as Chair of the General Council, it gives me even greater pleasure to greet the head of state of the fellow ASEAN member country. This is the 7th global review since the Aid for Trade initiative was launched at the Hong Kong Ministerial Conference in 2005. Your presence today is an important signal about the relevance of both the initiative and the theme of this year's review, quote, supporting economic diversification and empowerment. These objectives cannot be advanced in isolation. They must be taken forward holistically in a global economy. The Aid for Trade initiative seeks to expand the participation of developing countries and in particular least developed countries in the trading system with the aims of economic growth, poverty reduction and economic empowerment firmly in mind. Using the trading system, which is institution the WTO organization embodies to advance sustainable development. By fostering fairness and predictability in economic relations, the multilateral trading system contributes to economic advancement. Cambodia's experience since becoming the WTO 140th member on 13 of October 2004 stands as evidence in support of this statement. I look forward to your keynote speech, Your Excellency, and learning more about your plan to drive forward Cambodia's economic growth and development for the benefit of Cambodians, ASEAN, and the broader multilateral community. As you do so, I would also recall one of the core principles of the 2030 agenda, that we should leave no one behind. I take comfort that you are visiting the WTO at this challenging time for multilateralism. I think your presence underlines, however, how the multilateral trading system can act as a force for inclusion, especially for the LDC. On behalf of all WTO members, I would like to once again extend a very warm welcome to Your Excellency Somdet Teisho Hun Sen and invite you to give your keynote address. Thank you. Please.
Adam Roberto Acevedo អគ្គនាយកពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោកឯកឧត្តមលោកជំទាវអស់លោកស្រីថ្ងៃនេះខ្ញុំមានសេចក្តីរីករាយតែក្តីសមរម្យរីករាយជាណែកដែលបានចូលរួមក្នុងកិច្ចប្រជុំត្រួតពិនិត្យឡើងវិញជាសកលលើកទី7ស្ដីពីជំនួយសម្រាប់ពាណិជ្ជកម្មនៅទីស្នាក់ការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោកក្រោមប្រធានបទការគ្រប់គ្រងដល់ការធ្វើពិពិធកម្មនិងការផ្ដល់អំណាចសេដ្ឋកិច្ចប្រកបដោយបរិយាបន្ននិងចីរភាពតាមរយៈជំនួយសម្រាប់ពាណិជ្ជកម្មដើម្បីចែករំលែកបទពិសោធន៍របស់កម្ពុជាក្នុងការរៀបចំគោលនយោបាយពាណិជ្ជកម្មនិងជោគជ័យនៃការអភិវឌ្ឍសង្គមសេដ្ឋកិច្ច ក្រោយពេលដែលកម្ពុជាក្លាយទៅជាសមាជិកនៃអង្គការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោកឆ្នាំ2004ព្រមទាំងទួនាទីរបស់កម្ពុជានៅពេលបច្ចុប្បន្ននិងទៅអនាគតក្នុងការទ្រទ្រង់ប្រព័ន្ធពាណិជ្ជកម្មពហុភាគីនិងការបន្តរក្សាមាគ៌ាសេរីភាវូបនីយកម្មជាសកលក្នុងនាមរាជរដ្ឋាភិបាលនិងប្រជាជនកម្ពុជាខ្ញុំសូមអរគុណនិងវាយតម្លៃខ្ពស់ចំពោះអង្គការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោកដែលបានរៀបចំនិងអញ្ជើញខ្ញុំមកចូលរួមក្នុងឱកាសបើកកម្មវិធីនៃកិច្ចប្រជុំដ៏មានសារៈសំខាន់នេះខ្ញុំក៏សូមឆ្លៀតយកឱកាសនេះវាយតម្លៃខ្ពស់ចំពោះទួនាទីយ៉ាងសកម្មរបស់អង្គការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោកក្នុងការបង្កើតឲ្យមានវិធានការនានាដ៏ពេញលេញដែលคล้ายទៅជាមូលដ្ឋានគ្រឹះក្នុងការធ្វើសេរីភាវូបនីយកម្មជាសកលនិងសម្រាប់ពាណិជ្ជកម្មពហុភាគីធានាដល់សេដ្ឋីភាពនៃលំហូរពាណិជ្ជកម្មដោយសេរីរលូននិងអាចព្យាករណ៍បានក៏ដូចជានៅក្នុងការគៀងគរជំនួយនានាសម្រាប់អភិវឌ្ឍសេដ្ឋកិច្ចថ្នាក់ជាតិតំបន់និងអន្តរជាតិតាមរយៈការរៀបចំប្រជុំត្រួតពិនិត្យឡើងវិញនៅជំនួយសម្រាប់ពាណិជ្ជកម្មតែបានប្រព្រឹត្តទៅចំនួន6លើករួចមកហើយអង្គការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោកក៏បានជួយជំរុញផងដែរនៅកម្មវិធីធ្វើពិពិធកម្មសេដ្ឋកិច្ចនៅក្នុងបណ្ដាប្រទេសកំពុងអភិវឌ្ឍនិងប្រទេសអភិវឌ្ឍតិចតួចហើយបានជួយបង្កើនការធ្វើពាណិជ្ជកម្មអន្តរជាតិបង្កើតការងារនិងកាត់បន្ថយភាពក្រីក្រនៅក្នុងបណ្ដាប្រទេសជាសមាជិកប្រកបដោយប្រសិទ្ធភាពខ្ពស់ហើយចំលោកជំទាវអស់លោកស្រីក្នុងនាមជាប្រទេសដែលមានសេដ្ឋកិច្ចតូចកម្ពុជាជឿលើអត្ថប្រយោជន៍នៃសកលភាវូបនីយកម្មនិងកិច្ចសហប្រតិបត្តិការអន្តរជាតិឈរលើវិធានកតិយុត្តគឺទស្សនវិជ្ជានេះហើយដែលបានជំរុញយើងខ្ញុំឲ្យខិតខំប្រឹងប្រែងធ្វើការដើម្បីក្លាយជាសមាជិកពេញសិទ្ធិរបស់អង្គការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោកនៅឆ្នាំ2004មុនគេក្នុងចំណោមប្រទេសមានការអភិវឌ្ឍតិចតួចចំនួន2ទោះបីជាកម្ពុជាកាលពីពេលនោះនៅមិនទាន់មានការអភិវឌ្ឍមូលដ្ឋានគ្រឹះនៃសេដ្ឋកិច្ចបានរឹងមាំក៏ប៉ុន្តែលើមូលដ្ឋាននៃការអនុវត្តគោលនយោបាយសេដ្ឋកិច្ចទីផ្សារបើកចំហរបស់ខ្លួនកម្ពុជាបានសន្យាចងពន្ធគយលើគ្រប់មុខទំនិញនិងបើកច្រកទីផ្សារពាណិជ្ជកម្មផ្នែកសេវាប្រមាណជាង94វិស័យនិងអនុវិស័យនៅក្នុងឆ្នាំ2004ដែលជាចំនួនមួយច្រើនលើសលប់បើប្រៀបធៀបទៅនឹងប្រទេសមានការអភិវឌ្ឍខ្ពស់ដែលចូលជាសមាជិក WTO មុនកម្ពុជាជាមួយគ្នានេះដែរក្នុងនាមជាសមាជិកអង្គការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោកកម្ពុជាបានខិតខំបំពេញតួនាទីប្រកបដោយការទទួលខុសត្រូវខ្ពស់តាមរយៈការដាក់ចេញនិងរៀបចំកម្មវិធីកែតម្រង់ប្រព័ន្ធសេដ្ឋកិច្ចច្បាប់បទបញ្ញត្តិផ្សេងៗនិងវិធានការនានាដើម្បីឲ្យមានអនុលោមភាពនិងសុគតភាពទាំងស្រុងជាមួយបទបញ្ញត្តិអន្តរជាតិជាពិសេសឲ្យស្របតាមគោលការណ៍តាមការសន្យារបស់កម្ពុជាក្រោមក្របខ័ណ្ឌនៃអង្គការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោកជាមួយនឹងការខិតខំបំពេញភារកិច្ចជាសមាជិករបស់អង្គការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោករាជរដ្ឋាភិបាលកម្ពុជាក៏បានអនុវត្តយ៉ាងខ្ជាប់ខ្ជួននៅគោលការណ៍នៃលទ្ធិប្រជាធិបតេយ្យសេរីភូប៉ាខិតខំរក្សាសន្តិភាពស្ថិរភាពនយោបាយសណ្ដាប់ធ្នាប់សង្គមនិងគ្រប់គ្រងម៉ាក្រូសេដ្ឋកិច្ចនិងហិរញ្ញវត្ថុប្រកបដោយភាពប្រុងប្រយ័ត្នតាមរយៈការដាក់ចេញនិងអនុវត្តនៅយុទ្ធសាស្ត្រទូលំទូលាយជាអាចយុទ្ធសាស្ត្រចតុកោណដែលជារបៀបវិរៈគោលនយោបាយរួមសម្រាប់អភិវឌ្ឍសង្គមសេដ្ឋកិច្ចផែនការយុទ្ធសាស្ត្រអភិវឌ្ឍជាតិ និងយុទ្ធសាស្ត្រតាមវិស័យសំខាន់ដទៃទៀតនៅក្នុងវិស័យពាណិជ្ជកម្មកម្ពុជាបានរៀបចំនិងដាក់ឲ្យអនុវត្តនៅយុទ្ធសាស្ត្រសមាហរណកម្មពាណិជ្ជកម្មកម្ពុជាពីឆ្នាំ2001ហើយបានកែលម្អជាបន្តបន្ទាប់ដើម្បីឆ្លើយតបទៅនឹងកម្រិតនៃការអភិវឌ្ឍរបស់កម្ពុជានៅក្នុងឆ្នាំ2019នេះកម្ពុជាបានធ្វើបច្ចុប្បន្នភាពលើកទី3រួចមកហើយរួចជាស្ថាពរនៅយុទ្ធសាស្ត្រសមាហរណកម្មកម្ពុជា2019-2023ដើម្បីឆ្លើយតបទៅនឹងតម្រូវការអភិវឌ្ឍរបស់កម្ពុជាក៏ដូចជាឆ្លើយតបទៅនឹងបរិការបច្ចុប្បន្ននិងអនាគតនៃពាណិជ្ជកម្មតំបន់និងពិភពលោកជាលទ្ធផលពីកិច្ចខិតខំប្រឹងប្រែងខាងលើកម្ពុជាសម្រេចបាននៅកំណើនសេដ្ឋកិច្ចជាមធ្យមប្រចាំឆ្នាំក្នុងរង្វង់ 7.7% ប្រកបដោយបរិយាបន្ននិងសមាធិក្នុងរយៈពេល2ទសវត្សរ៍ចុងក្រោយនេះកម្ពុជាថែមទាំងសម្រេចបាននៅបង្គោលជ័រជាប្រវត្តិសាស្ត្រគឺការឆ្លងផុតពីឋានៈប្រទេសចំណូលទាបទៅជាប្រទេសមានចំណូលមធ្យមកម្រិតទាបជាផ្លូវការនៅឆ្នាំ2015សម្រាប់ឆ្នាំ2018កន្លងទៅនេះអត្រាកំណើនសេដ្ឋកិច្ចកម្ពុជាសម្រេចបាន 7.5% និងត្រូវបានព្យាករណ៍ថានឹងអាចរក្សាបានបន្តរក្សាបានក្នុងរង្វង់ 7% ក្នុងមួយឆ្នាំសម្រាប់រយៈពេលមធ្យមទៅមុខអត្រានៃភាពក្រីក្របានធ្លាក់ចុះពី 53.2% នៅឆ្នាំ2004មកនៅក្រោម 10% នៅឆ្នាំ2018ជាមួយគ្នានេះកម្ពុជាបានធ្វើពិពិធកម្មទាំងផលិតផលនិងទីផ្សារដែលក្នុងនោះការនាំចេញរបស់កម្ពុជាបានកើនឡើងពី $5,700 លានស្មើនឹង 40.5% នៃផលិតផលក្នុងស្រុកសរុបនៅឆ្នាំ2012មកដល់ $13,000 លានស្មើនឹង 53.2% នៃផលិតផលសរុបនៅឆ្នាំ2018នឹងបានធ្វើពិពិធកម្មបន្តិចម្ដងពីការនាំចេញសម្លៀកបំពាក់ទៅកាន់ផលិតផលផ្សេងទៀតដូចគ្នាដែរគោលដៅនាំចេញត្រូវបានធ្វើពិពិធកម្មពីការផ្ដោតលើទីផ្សារអាមេរិកនិងទៅផ្ដោតលើទីផ្សារអឺរ៉ុបជប៉ុននិងតំបន់អាស៊ាននិងប្រទេសដទៃទៀតឯកឧត្តមលោកជំទាវអស់លោកស្រីដើម្បីជាការតបស្នងដល់អង្គការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោកក៏ដូចជាដើម្បីជួយទ្រទ្រង់ដល់ការចរចាក្រោមឆ័ត្រក្រោមក្របខ័ណ្ឌនៃអង្គការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោកនិងពង្រឹងតួនាទីរបស់អង្គការនេះក្នុងកាលៈទេសៈសេដ្ឋកិច្ចពិភពលោកកំពុងទទួលរងនៅការគំរាមពីនយោបាយកំពានិយមនិងសង្គ្រាមពាណិជ្ជកម្មទោះបីកម្ពុជាត្រូវប្រឈមនឹងកង្វះធនធានមនុស្សហើយធនធានថវិកាក៏នៅមានកម្រិតក៏ដោយក្នុងនាមរាជរដ្ឋាភិបាលកម្ពុជាខ្ញុំបានសម្រេចឲ្យបង្កើតស្ថានបេសកកម្មប្រចាំអង្គការនេះនៅឆ្នាំ2017ហើយបានណែនាំឲ្យរដ្ឋមន្ត្រីក្រសួងពាណិជ្ជកម្មនិងអគ្គរដ្ឋទូតរបស់យើងនៅទីនេះខិតខំបំពេញតួនាទីធ្វើជាប្រធានសម្របសម្រួលក្រុមប្រទេសអភិវឌ្ឍតិចតួចឆ្នាំ2017-2018ឲ្យបានជោគជ័យនិងបន្តបំពេញតួនាទីយ៉ាងសំខាន់ក្នុងនាមជាសមាជិកត្រយការជួយដល់សាធារណរដ្ឋអាហ្វ្រិកកណ្ដាលនិងសាធារណរដ្ឋឆាតក្នុងការដឹកនាំសម្របសម្រួលក្រុមប្រទេសអភិវឌ្ឍតិចតួចទាំង36ប្រទេសលើការចរចាក្រោមឆ័ត្រអង្គការក្រោមក្របខ័ណ្ឌអង្គការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោកឲ្យបានជោគជ័យជាបន្តទៀតជោគជ័យចម្បងមួយទៀតនោះគឺកម្ពុជាត្រូវបានជ្រើសរើសជាសមាជិកគណៈកម្មការនយោបាយគម្រោងពង្រឹងក្របខ័ណ្ឌសមាហរណកម្មឆ្នាំ2018បន្ថែមលើនេះទៀត កម្ពុជាក៏បានខិតខំប្រឹងប្រែងនិងម្ចាស់ការលើការអនុវត្តកាតព្វកិច្ចនានារួមទាំងកាតព្វកិច្ចនៃការជូនដំណឹងនិងការត្រួតពិនិត្យឡើងវិញនៅគោលនយោបាយពាណិជ្ជកម្មបានចំនួន2លើករួចមកហើយក្នុងឆ្នាំ2011និងឆ្នាំ2017ព្រមទាំងបានបំពេញកាតព្វកិច្ចរបស់ខ្លួនក្នុងការផ្ដល់សច្ចាប័នចូលជាសមាជិកនៃកិច្ចព្រមព្រៀងស្ដីពីកិច្ចសម្រួលពាណិជ្ជកម្មនិងបានអនុវត្តបទបញ្ញត្តិប្រមាណជាង 70% រួចមកហើយផងដែរជោគជ័យដែលបានជម្រាបខាងលើបានឆ្លុះបញ្ចាំងពីយុទ្ធសាស្ត្រដែលខ្ញុំធ្លាប់បានជម្រាបជូនឯកឧត្តម Roberto Azevedo កាលពីខ្ញុំជួបឯកឧត្តមនៅឆ្នាំ2018ថាដាក់នុយតូចស្ទូចដើម្បីស្ទូចយកត្រីធំមានន័យថាបង្កើតស្ថាប័នស្ថានបេសកកម្មកម្ពុជាប្រចាំអង្គការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោកដើម្បីទទួលបានសមិទ្ធផលធំជាងនេះក្រៅពីនេះក្នុងក្របខ័ណ្ឌអាស៊ាននិងតំបន់កម្ពុជាបានដើរតួនាទីយ៉ាងសកម្មនៅក្នុងការអនុវត្តកាតព្វកិច្ចនិងកិច្ចព្រមព្រៀងនានារបស់អាស៊ានដើម្បីសម្រេចបាននៅសហគមន៍សេដ្ឋកិច្ចអាស៊ានឆ្នាំ2015និងចក្ខុវិស័យសមាគមសេដ្ឋកិច្ចអាស៊ានដែលនឹងប្រែក្លាយទៅជាទីផ្សារនិងមូលដ្ឋានផលិតកម្មជាតំបន់ដែលមានការប្រកួតប្រជែងខ្ពស់មានការអភិវឌ្ឍដោយសមត្ថភាពហើយធ្វើសមាហរណកម្មជាមួយសេដ្ឋកិច្ចពិភពលោកបច្ចុប្បន្នកម្ពុជាកំពុងសហការយ៉ាងជិតស្និទ្ធជាមួយប្រទេសអាស៊ីចំនួន15ទៀតដើម្បីចរចាបញ្ចប់ក្នុងឆ្នាំ2019នេះនៅកិច្ចព្រមព្រៀងពាណិជ្ជកម្មសេរីដ៏ធំមួយហៅកាត់ថា ASEP ដែលមានផលិតផលសរុបចំនួនជាង 30% នៃផលិតផលពិភពលោកគិតជាទឹកប្រាក់ប្រមាណ85 trillion ដុល្លារអាមេរិកសម្រាប់ឆ្នាំ2018ឯកឧត្តមលោកជំទាវអស់លោកស្រីឆ្លៀតក្នុងឱកាសដ៏វិសេសវិសាលនេះខ្ញុំសូមវាយតម្លៃខ្ពស់និងកោតសរសើរដល់អង្គការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោកព្រមទាំងដៃគូអភិវឌ្ឍនិងអង្គការអន្តរជាតិនានាដែលបានផ្ដល់នូវកិច្ចសហប្រតិបត្តិការយ៉ាងល្អក្នុងការចូលរួមចំណែកជួយប្រទេសអភិវឌ្ឍតិចតួចរួមទាំងកម្ពុជាផងដែរចាប់ផ្ដើមតាំងពីការចរចាជាសមាជិកចូលជាសមាជិកនៃអង្គការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោករហូតមកដល់បច្ចុប្បន្ននេះសម្រាប់កម្ពុជាចក្ខុវិស័យរបស់យើងគឺការប្រែក្លាយកម្ពុជាឲ្យទៅជាប្រទេសដែលមានចំណូលមធ្យមកម្រិតខ្ពស់នៅឆ្នាំ2030និងជាប្រទេសមានចំណូលខ្ពស់នៅឆ្នាំ2050ដើម្បីឲ្យកម្ពុជាសម្រេចបាននៅគោលដៅនេះក៏ដូចជាជួយដល់ប្រទេសអភិវឌ្ឍតិចតួចឲ្យចាកចេញពីភាពក្រីក្របានឆាប់រហ័សស្របតាមគោលដៅអភិវឌ្ឍប្រកបដោយចីរភាពឆ្នាំ2030ខ្ញុំសូមអំពាវនាវដល់បណ្ដារដ្ឋជាសមាជិកនិងដៃគូអភិវឌ្ឍទាំងអស់ពិចារណាផ្ដល់ការឧបត្ថម្ភគាំទ្របន្តទៀតតាមវិស័យសំខាន់មួយចំនួនដូចខាងក្រោមទី1ការពង្រឹងភាពប្រកួតប្រជែងរបស់ប្រទេសអភិវឌ្ឍតិចតួចនិងជួយគាំទ្រដល់ប្រទេសដល់កម្មវិធីនិងដំណើរការចាកចេញពីប្រទេសអភិវឌ្ឍតិចតួចទី2ការបន្តនិងបង្កើនការផ្ដល់ភាពអនុគ្រោះនានាតាមរយៈប្រព័ន្ធពាណិជ្ជកម្មពហុភាគីឬឯកតោភាគីហើយសូមធ្វើការពិចារណាឲ្យបានដិតដល់មុននឹងដាក់វិធានការព្យួរឬដកចេញនៅភាពអនុគ្រោះពីប្រទេសអភិវឌ្ឍតិចតួចព្រោះការព្យួរឬការដកនេះនឹងធ្វើឲ្យប្រទេសទាំងនោះមិនអាចជួយពិភពលោកឲ្យសម្រេចបាននៅគោលដៅអភិវឌ្ឍប្រកបដោយចីរភាពនិងមិនអាចជួយពួកគេឲ្យចាកចេញពីឋានៈជាប្រទេសអភិវឌ្ឍតិចតួចបានឡើយ ដែលចលនានេះគឺជាដំណើរផ្ទុយទាំងស្រុងទៅនឹងគោលការណ៍របស់អង្គការសហប្រជាជាតិនិងអង្គការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោកទី3ការកសាងសមត្ថភាពដើម្បីទាញយកប្រយោជន៍ពីប្រភពកំណើនថ្មីជាពិសេសផ្នែកសេវានិងការទទួលបានបដិវត្តន៍និងការទទួលយកបដិវត្តន៍ឧស្សាហកម្មទី4និងដើម្បីទាញយកផលប្រយោជន៍ដែលអាចទទួលបានពីសេដ្ឋកិច្ច Digital ទី4ការរៀបចំយុទ្ធសាស្ត្រធ្វើវិប្បកម្មសេដ្ឋកិច្ចនិងផលិតផលចម្រុះសម្ដៅបង្កើនការនាំចេញដែលជាប្រភពចំណូលសម្រាប់លើកកម្ពស់សុខុមាលភាពនិងការងារដល់ស្ត្រីទី5ការតភ្ជាប់គោលនយោបាយយុទ្ធសាស្ត្រនិងចក្ខុវិស័យនានារបស់ប្រទេសអភិវឌ្ឍន៍តិចតួចជាមួយនឹងការវិវត្តសេដ្ឋកិច្ចតំបន់និងពិភពលោកទី6ការបង្កើនវិនិវត្តន៍និងជំរុញលើកកម្ពស់ការអនុវត្តថ្មីតាមរយៈការគៀងគរហិរញ្ញប្បទានបន្ថែមពីដៃគូអភិវឌ្ឍន៍និងវិស័យឯកជនក្រោមក្របខ័ណ្ឌនៃកិច្ចប្រជុំនេះនិងកិច្ចប្រជុំផ្សេងទៀតទី7ការបន្តផ្តល់ជំនួយនានាសម្រាប់កែតម្រង់និងសម្រាប់ការគ្រប់គ្រងដល់ការអនុវត្តកិច្ចព្រមព្រៀងសម្រួលពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិសេសលើការកែតម្រង់លិខិតបទកថាគតិយុត្តនានាឯកឧត្តមលោកជំទាវអស់លោកស្រីខ្ញុំមានកិត្តិយសសូមជម្រាបជូនថាកម្ពុជានឹងរៀបចំកម្មវិធី Side Event ដើម្បីបង្ហាញពីយុទ្ធសាស្ត្រសមាហរណកម្មពាណិជ្ជកម្មកម្ពុជាឆ្នាំ2019-2023នៅល្ងាចនេះពីម៉ោង 16:30 ដល់ម៉ោង 17:30 ក្រោមអធិបតីភាពឯកឧត្តមប៉ាន់សុស័ក្តិរដ្ឋមន្ត្រីក្រសួងពាណិជ្ជកម្មកម្ពុជាខ្ញុំសូមលើកទឹកចិត្តឯកឧត្តមលោកជំទាវលោកស្រីចូលរួមកម្មវិធីនេះដើម្បីសិក្សាតាមដានពីការចែករំលែកបទពិសោធន៍និងជោគជ័យនានារបស់កម្ពុជាក្នុងការអនុវត្តគម្រោងយុទ្ធសាស្ត្រថ្មីជាមួយនឹងការជូនដំណឹងនេះខ្ញុំសូមប្រកាសជាឧឡារិកដាក់ឲ្យប្រើប្រាស់នៅយុទ្ធសាស្ត្រសមាហរណកម្មកម្ពុជាឆ្នាំ2019-2022ចាប់ពីពេលនេះតទៅខ្ញុំក៏សូមបញ្ជាក់ជូនថានេះគឺជាយុទ្ធសាស្ត្រសមាហរណកម្មរបស់កម្ពុជាដែលដាក់ចេញសម្រាប់ការអានគឺត្រូវការពេលវេលាប៉ុន្តែសម្រាប់យើងខ្ញុំបានធ្វើរួចមកហើយប៉ុន្តែក៏ត្រូវធ្វើនៅផ្នែកដែលត្រូវទៀមទាត្រូវធ្វើនោះគឺតាក់ទងជាមួយនឹងការកែតម្រង់ខាងក្នុងផងនិងតម្រូវទៅលើកិច្ចការកែតម្រង់ទាំងឡាយដែលអង្គការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោកនឹងត្រូវដាក់ចេញនៅពេលខាងមុខប្រសិនបើបណ្ដាប្រទេសនានាមិនមានការគ្រប់គ្រងទៅលើកំណែតម្រង់របស់អង្គការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោកទេយើងគិតថាយើងមិនអាចនាំប្រទេសរបស់យើងទាំងអស់គ្នាទៅកាន់ជោគជ័យមួយទេដូច្នេះមួយផ្នែកយើងរួមគ្នាដើម្បីកែតម្រង់តាមប្រទេសនីមួយៗតែមួយផ្នែកទៀតយើងត្រូវចូលរួមនៅក្នុងការកែតម្រង់អង្គការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោកនិងកម្មវិធីនានាដែលដាក់ចេញដោយអង្គការពាណិជ្ជកម្មពិភពលោកដូច្នេះសង្ឃឹមថាឯកសាររបស់កម្ពុជានេះនឹងបានคล้ายទៅជាផ្នែកនៃការតេស្តរិះពិចារណារបស់ឯកឧត្តមលោកជំទាវនៃបណ្ដាប្រទេសនានាប៉ុន្តែសម្រាប់កម្ពុជាបានคล้ายទៅជាផ្នែកដែលចាប់បង្ខំត្រូវតែអនុវត្តព្រោះនេះវាជាចំណុចដែលកម្ពុជាត្រូវធ្វើដោយខ្លួនឯងជាទីបញ្ចប់ខ្ញុំសូមប្រកាសបើកកម្មវិធីការត្រួតពិនិត្យឡើងវិញ ជាសកលលើកទី7ស្ដីពីជំនួយសម្រាប់ពាណិជ្ជកម្មជាផ្លូវការចាប់ពីពេលនេះតទៅសូមអរគុណ
Yeah, I just wanted to put this in here. Thank you. All right, I'm back. Thank you very much, Prime Minister. And let me also seize this opportunity to welcome Her Excellency Dr. Isatou Touré, Vice President of the Gambia. Welcome to be here with us. It was very encouraging to hear about the importance of the multilateral trading system and of the Aid for Trade initiative for Cambodia's growth and development objectives. I fully support that vision. In our lifetime, trade has helped to lift 1 billion people out of poverty. It was vital in delivering the Millennium Development Goal to have to cut by 50% extreme poverty. Now it must play the same role in delivering the Sustainable Development Goals. This is a defining test for the entire international community. It brings our responsibilities as leaders, as policymakers, and as citizens into sharp focus. We must rise to the challenge, and this requires hard work and commitment, and it requires constant dialogue. This is why we're all gathered here today, for trade to play its full role in promoting growth and development. It is not about simply throwing open the doors to markets around the world. We have to ensure that people have the tools that they need to trade and to compete. The Aid for Trade initiative plays a key role to this end. Since it was launched over just a decade ago, over $409 billion have been disbursed under the Aid for Trade initiative, reaching 146 countries or territories, and that support has been targeted at helping those countries to build their trading infrastructure and capacity. Now, building trading capacity means that people can develop the necessary skills that they need to trade. It means that they can access vital information to tap into global markets. It means that they can build the necessary infrastructure to ship their goods and services. And in turn, all this brings positive impact to many livelihoods and communities around the world. And this task is just as urgent as ever. More than 780 million people still live below the poverty line globally. Many still cut off from the potential benefits of trade. This global review is a platform to discuss ways in which we can deliver more and deliver it more quickly. The theme of this year's event is supporting economic diversification and empowerment. Diversification and empowerment matter because they help to build resilience in economies. They help countries increase their participation in global trade flows, as well as facilitate opportunities to move up the value chains, and in turn, all this helps to build better prospects and opportunities for improved livelihoods. So this message emerges strongly from the latest edition of the Aid for Trade at a Glance publication, which Angel and I will launch today. We are, in fact, launching today. So this is a publication very similar to the other one, but it's different, as thick, and with a lot of good content. I hope you will take a look. Angel will speak, I'm sure, about some of that a little bit later. The publication shows that economic diversification remains a central policy objective of economic development strategies, and this is especially the case for least developed and landlocked developing countries. It also showcases some important progress where aid for trade initiatives have helped to make a difference. It is notable that Africa records the strongest growth rate in agricultural and industrial export diversification. Between 2002 and 2017, the number of industrial product categories exported increased by 70%. So this is important progress. At the same time, the publication shows that big imbalances remain. For example, it shows that on average, the least diversified economies, they export only 6 groups of products to 7 export markets. Now, if you compare that to the most diversified economies, they export more than 4,500 product groups to over 200 markets. So, of course, many factors contribute to this. Lack of access to trade finance, for example, has been cited as a major constraint. Lack of quality regulatory infrastructure is also a barrier to diversification. To compete in foreign markets and diversify into new ones, countries need institutions to test, to measure and demonstrate the safety and quality of products. Now, the absence of this regulatory infrastructure can be a major trade constraint. Gender imbalances can also prevent countries from fully tapping into their economic potential. Today, 84% of donors aid for trade strategies and 85% of partner countries' national or regional development strategies seek to promote women's economic empowerment, and this is very encouraging. Another constraint is the digital divide. At a time where digital technologies are evolving at an incredibly rapid pace, we have to ensure that everyone has access to proper connectivity and IT skills. Otherwise, the risk is that existing gaps will simply broaden. Environmental degradation also poses a huge challenge. And this includes the depletion of ocean line as a direct result of poor economic policies, including subsidies that encourage overfishing. We have a chance now at the WTO to tackle this issue. Ministers from all members have a target before them, which is the end of 2019 to deliver action on all of these fronts would go a long way towards building a more inclusive trading system and achieving the sustainable development goals. I'm pleased, therefore, that each of those issues and more will be under discussion here over the next 3 days. However, I want to stress that achieving progress in every area that I have mentioned so far is dependent on one factor. And that is the continued foundation provided by the multilateral system. The rules-based global system is vital for growth and development. Just think about a world without development. A world without a rules-based system of global cooperation and trade will be highly chaotic. It will be the long term. It will be a world where might makes right. The poorest economies are hit the hardest. So it is essential that we tackle the tensions that are leading to higher trade barriers and trade growth. The G20 leaders sent a message out of the Osaka summit this week support of trade as a driver of growth and support of reform of the WTO. So I am very happy with this, that I consider this a positive message. But now we need to see action. In the interest of all WTO members, we need to see action to reduce uncertainty and to strengthen and improve the trading system. The WTO's track record shows that it is critical for development, but we also know that it can be better. So we must be ready to change. We must be ready to consider how we can be more effective. Events like this can only happen to help in that effort. Working together, across our organizations and communities, we can strengthen the global trade system and ensure that it keeps driving development now and for generations to come. So, let's get to it. I would like to thank all those at the WTO who have made this week possible, particularly Shishi and Priyadarsh's teams in the development division. I now would like to give the floor to our friends here at the podium. Let me start with the Secretary.
ដែលជាដៃគូសំខាន់ដែលជា OECD សូមអញ្ជើញមានដៃសាគឺគេហាក់ដូចជាពីម្សិលមិញដែលខ្ញុំបានថ្លែងនៅដំណាក់កាលទី1
and it's growing. So I think we should change aid for trade at a glance. It's becoming anything but at a glance, you know. But it's big and thick and heavy with substance, and you have provided the substance, and thank you very much for that. Now, Roberto finished on the question of multilaterality, and let me just pick it up from there. A year ago, our chief economist projected that we were going to be growing at 4% by 2019 and 2020. Right now, we just published another projection, 3.2%. What happened in between? A number of countries embarked on trade tensions, protectionism, tariffs. Some people even call it trade wars, what have you. The fact of the matter is, that is the one thing that changed between one observation and the other. It was a perfect case of kind of scientific test of looking at what changed and why is it now that we almost lost 1% in terms of the growth. And I can tell you, in Osaka, where I was only a few hours ago, literally, in the summit, the fear was that obviously if the tensions get worse, the impact will only multiply. So let's keep it in our minds. Why? Because trade is only growing maybe 2%, maybe below 2% right now, when it was already growing at more than 5% in 2017, and when it's been going down, growing towards zero. Bad news. But what happens? Why? When you have uncertainty, why do you invest? You invest to produce. Why do you produce? You produce to sell. But if you cannot sell or don't know if you're going to be able to sell, then in a responsible, rational act, you withhold your investment. You don't invest. And there, the growth drops immediately. You even hold your consumption because the next year will be uncertain. So you save. Then growth today. And of course, investment is the seed of the growth of tomorrow. This is what's happening around us as we speak. It's not theoretical. Already it has cost us, well, close to 1% in terms of world growth. And then you have costs in different parts of the world. So let's just take that into consideration going forward. Now, thank you for this. I mean, thank you to all of you who participated. And I mean UNCTAD, I mean the IFC, the ITC, the World Bank, and of course our co-authors, writers, etc. Even if O goes first and W, the World Trade Organization put its name first because they were the ones who printed the thing, you see. So, no, it was printed in Geneva, as you can see, you know. No, I mean, it's great. It's one of those things. We do it all the time. We work all the time. We work all year long. Thank you to the teams here, the WTO teams and the OECD teams. It's really great that we're looking at this with such detail. Now, since the start of the Aid for Trade initiative, donors have disbursed $409 billion in official development assistance. And in addition, $346 billion in low-cost concessional loans were disbursed. And interestingly, which is contrary to what is happening with trade in with aid for in general, ODA, you know, in general, the poorest developing countries are getting more than double the support of the better off developing countries. This is very, very good indeed, because as our colleagues from all the UN agencies know, the World Bank, etc., that it's happening the other way around. It's easier to give money to countries that are better off because they have a greater capacity to spend it, and to spend it even in a better organized way, and therefore they get more money effectively. So this is exactly the opposite to what we'd like, and it is happening in Aid for Trade that the poorest developing countries are actually getting the most of the money, actually double per capita. Now, growth in manufacturing, of course, in related services has absorbed large numbers of workers. And this is great in terms of the results. This is exactly what we were seeking. Now the problem, of course, is we also have to put in public policies in place so that we can face the future of, automation, the digital future, so that the people who are benefiting now do not get displaced by technology. Indeed, the path towards economic diversification is becoming increasingly complex due to subdued trade growth and foreign direct investment. Now, in fact, these trade tensions that I was talking about, they have hit the most vulnerable hardest. In particular, the least developed, the landlocked, as was mentioned by Roberto, the small island, the developing states, the most fragile states. They can ill afford the cost of global uncertainty. Uncertainty is the greatest enemy of growth. So they urgently need to raise their export competitiveness so that trade can benefit marginalized groups, in particular youth, the women. And here I'd like to congratulate Arantxa for having been appointed or nominated or whatever it was, elected, whatever democratic process was used by the Secretary General to designate you as in charge of promoting gender balance in the UN agencies. Now, we must focus on the economic empowerment of women and youth, an issue that remains high on the 2030 agenda for sustainable development. Thus, aid programs need to focus more explicitly on helping developing countries create extra opportunities for women and youth, particularly in sectors such as manufacturing, but also in less obvious sectors, banking, transport, energy, etc. And skills. Upskilling, reskilling, this is not going to happen spontaneously. It needs a focus. It needs, in the case of least developed countries, that we direct some of the flows of aid for the creation of skills that will then in itself, in turn, create higher and more important flows of trade. And then Well, most of our countries, I'm Mexican, most of the countries are SMEs, are about SMEs. That's a crucial factor. And the entry into force of the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement, Roberto, has created a momentum that is helping to level the playing field, between large and small firms. And that is being achieved by improving the environment that SMEs are facing. I just would like to leave you with this idea that the SMEs, again, when you're targeting your aid and the recipient countries, when they are allocating the aid that they are receiving or requesting specifically, now it's more and more targeted, then take a hard look at SMEs as a very specific destination. Now, looking forward, let's pay greater attention to the social, environmental impact of economic diversification. Prepare for it. It's inevitable. And therefore, let's make the most out of it. Better incentive frameworks to attract more and better private investments. Targeted social policies to support the reallocation of resources. Government interventions that address market, policy, and institutional failures, and, of course, to continue with policy reforms, the reform of the reforms. It never stops, targeted to reducing trade costs. And this, of course, with better access to infrastructure and health. All this at the same time. It's a very challenging agenda, but at the same time, it is well known. The question is how to allocate scarce resources to this. So, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, our joint work here today demonstrates that the only way forward is by ensuring that all stakeholders are involved. No protectionism, no silo approaches are going to deliver. It's only going to work if we work together to design, develop, and deliver better aid for trade policies for better lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Angel. And may I now invite Secretary General Mukiza Kitui from UNCTAD.
Your Excellency, the Prime Minister of Cambodia, Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Gambia, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, may I also express my appreciation to you, Azevedo, and your team for convening this timely discussion on Global Aid for Trade review. There's no gainsaying the importance of diversification as an engine for creating wealth, for improving returns on trade, but it's also a reality that while many developing countries have since the 90s aligned their policies with diversification, an overwhelming majority of the developing countries are still dependent on commodities. This typically has shown robust economic growth during the periods of high commodity prices and anemic growth when the cycle has been down. And more often than not, the cycle is down. Since the end of the Uruguay round, while there has been a steady increase in trade, export trade for developing countries, the results of diversification have been much more mixed than that. First, the main focus of diversification has been in pursuit of policies that could create access to global value chains. And the main driver of this has been the development of special economic zones. This was logical in the 90s, and indeed up to the crisis of 2008, because the global value chains were proliferating all over the world, and the expansion saw immediate expansion of trade and employment opportunities. But today, the circumstances are changed. Characterized, of course, by contracting trade, as Mr. Gore just mentioned, slow FDI, and weaker quality of FDI. Less greenfield investments, more mergers and acquisitions, hot money, and account shifting investment appearances. But even more importantly, the character of limited margins for price changes, tax changes because of liberalization, and deceleration in the global value chains, occasioned by the rising cold technology war disguised in the garb of trade wars, means that the medium-term prospects of rapid recovery in export-led global value chain-driven diversification is very low. Under these circumstances, developing countries must diversify their diversification strategy while still trying to find a role in value chains as they change, as networks shift because of political considerations. There has to be growing attention in diversifying towards services trade, South-South intra-regional trade, and the rising market of green products. Now, services trade has not slowed down as much as goods trade. In fact, over the past decade, while goods trade has averaged 3% per annum growth, services trade has averaged 8%. And South-South trade has another premium. Not only has it been steadily growing, but it has more content of technology transfer and indeed more value-added trade between South and South. The example of Africa can bail this out. First, that over the past 10 years, Africa's export have improved in local value addition to 15%. But when you look to Africa trade, the value-added content rises to 26%. And this may be an important frontier of addressing new forms of diversification. During the past decade also, the global demand for green markets, green products, as opposed to traditional brown goods, has been steadily growing. And we can only see these expanding in the coming period, and therefore requiring greater concerted efforts. To support these new opportunities for export diversification, we need greater regional and global cooperation in a number of important areas, particularly regulatory cooperation to reduce the barriers that pose services restrictions to trade, technical and tariff measures, and new voluntary sustainability standards, which are major inhibitors for vulnerable small businesses crossing borders. Aid for trade funds have continued to support important areas of regional trade integration, but these areas require new impetus, particularly on the technical barriers of trade and SPS regulatory cooperation between the different partners. And finally, I wish to return to what Azabero just mentioned, the growing importance of the digital economy. It is not good enough for us to paraphrase our statements about development with the digital economy matters, and yet limited commitment to resourcing digital inclusion. While some of us acknowledge what the World Bank generously called its moonshot of $5 billion for digital economy investment in developing countries, I think it's about time that in aid for trade discussions we have concerted effort, targeted effort on seeing digital infrastructure as aid for trade infrastructure. It's not good enough that less than 4% of all aid for trade resources go into ICT-enabled services, and less than 1% of this into policy support for developing countries. It's not good enough that G20 ministerials, like the one we had in Subuku last month, in Japan, in Subuka, will say things about the need for leaving no one behind and digital inclusion. It's critical that those at the risk of being left behind are at the table when the discussion of their inclusion is being made, and that cannot be in the G20 meetings. Similarly, while plurilateral negotiations on the potential of e-commerce as an enabler for growth are gaining momentum in a plurilateral way, the 87 developing countries out there that are not part of this process should remain center and forward of the agenda if it is going to be about inclusion. And avenues have to be found for getting them into the negotiation, because after all, they are the ones who will implement what determines whether we succeed or we fail. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mukisa. And now, Philippe Leroux, Chief Executive Officer of the International Finance Corporation of the World Bank Group.
Your Excellency Hun Sen, Prime Minister of Cambodia, Roberto Azevedo, Director General of the World Trade Organization, honorable guests and ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of the World Bank Group, it is indeed an honor to be part of what has become one of the biggest achievements in global development, namely unlocking the potential of trade for developing countries. As you all know, and Roberto, you mentioned it, but it's good to repeat it again and again, trade has been at the center of tremendous poverty reduction over the past few decades. Since 1990, more than 1 billion people have been moved out of poverty due to economic growth underpinned by better trade practices. Spurred by our collective actions to promote trade as an engine of growth and development, applied tariffs globally have fallen by about 35% over the past 20 years. In parallel, behind-the-border reforms have helped attract investments and stimulate the development of global value chains. With every percentage point increase in a country trade openness, we have seen productivity increase by 1.25 percentage points. Trade also promotes inclusion. Preliminary research carried out jointly by the World Bank Group and the WTO suggests that trade is linked to higher female labor participation. Firms that are more integrated in the world economy have higher shares of female employment. Trade has also brought more women into the formal economy, with greater job opportunities and higher wages for low-skilled women. The ready-made garment sector in Bangladesh showcases how trade is transforming lives. 90% of the sector's 4 million workers are women. This is a 100-fold increase in labor force participation by Bangladeshi women in just 30 years. In addition, the sector's rapid growth and job prospects have had a sizable effect on parents' decisions to keep girls in school for longer and have delayed marriage and childbirth. The benefit of trade extends even to conflict resolution. We have evidence that fostering cooperation through trade and business is an absolute game changer in helping countries escape war and poverty. It is not by chance that the most dramatic expansion of global trade in history, a 7-fold growth between 1970 and 2010, was also accompanied by a 94% drop in global conflict-related casualties. This also applies at the regional level. World Bank Group research in the Great Lakes area in Africa show that border areas that trade more have significantly lower conflict events. This has led political leaders like President Paul Kagame of Rwanda to become champions of the potentially transformational African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Ladies and gentlemen, the benefits of global trade are measurable and meaningful. However, we must not ignore several long-standing as well as emerging challenges that pose a risk to global trading system, especially for developing countries. To begin with, we must not relent our efforts to reduce tariffs, which remain stubbornly high in some regions. That will only take us so far. Behind-the-border reforms, such as removing trade-distorting subsidies and inefficient non-tariff measures, must also be advanced. Improved trade facilitation and logistics is another challenge to the global trading system. To avoid bottlenecks, which are especially damaging for developing countries, we must ensure efficient and sustainable supply chains. And it goes without saying that a stable and predictable trading system is essential for global trade to grow. To this end, we must act collectively to preserve and strengthen the rules-based trading system. I now would like to touch on two newer challenges to global trade and the steps we should take in response. First, anti-money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism regulations have increased the risk and cost for banks. This has reduced correspondent banking and trade finance, especially for developing countries. Since 2011, the number of correspondent banks has fallen by more than 19%, and letters of credit have dropped by 13%. Now, these trade finance shortfalls are particularly acute for the poorest countries. As one importer in Tanzania said recently, we in Africa, no one wants to work with you without a confirmed letter of credit. So banks, regulators, and international financial institutions must take coordinated and comprehensive actions to stem the decline in trade finance. Legal identifiers, when backed by blockchain, are potentially revolutionary for trade finance. A single global standard for legal identifiers could really level the playing field, especially for SME importers in developing countries. Angel will be happy. The second new challenge is a growing pushback against trade in some developed countries. The speed of globalization has outpaced the ability of many communities to adapt. Some regions and communities are being shut out from the benefits of trade. An adjustment to trade openness can take much longer than expected. While the pains of adjustment are often blamed on trade, recently, rapid technological advances have also played a large role. Technology has brought economic concentration and exacerbated the gap between unskilled labor and those with human and financial capital. In several advanced countries, as well as fast-growing developing economies, inequality is increasing, not decreasing. The standard prescription to cope with the cost of adjustment is to support worker mobility for new and better jobs. We do this by teaching people, especially youth, the relevant skill for a world of changing technology and open market. But this should be coupled with social protection systems and labor policies that protect people, not jobs. Obviously, the policies have to be adapted to domestic, economic and social conditions. And we must take this as a priority. Now, ladies and gentlemen, to sum up, trade has and can continue to be a driver for tremendous economic growth, peace and prosperity. But we must not take the gains of trade for granted. We must confront head-on the challenges associated with global trade. Greater inclusion is the key for making trade work for all and helping us achieve our goal of ending extreme poverty and promoting shared prosperity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philippe. And now, if we could hear from Arantxa Gonzalez, Executive Director of the International Trade Center.
Buenos días, Prime Minister Hun Sen. It's good to have you back in Geneva. Colleagues, friends, there is a strange contradiction about the world we live in. By many objective measures, whether it's extreme poverty, hunger, child mortality, literacy levels, we are doing better than at any time before. And yet the world is marred in geopolitics, with the value of multilateralism questioned, and with the working poor increasing, in particular in middle-income countries. My intention this morning is not to argue either case, but the fact is that we are in the middle of three major revolutions that are giving people every reason to feel very uneasy about their lives and their future prospects. Revolution number one is a digital revolution that is fundamentally changing the way in which we produce, the way in which we trade, and this House knows this very well, but also the way in which we work. It's opening up many new opportunities, but it's also creating a lot of anxieties. Second, an ecological revolution. Climate change and other kinds of environmental degradation are exacerbating existing inequalities. And in my view, we should do good in not letting this happen. Third, a social revolt. Economic insecurity is driving angry politics. Sluggish growth, or growth that is unequally shared, is fueling voter dissatisfaction across the world. Our responses to each one of these revolutions has the potential to lead us to a more equitable, sustainable, and prosperous future. The question facing us this week is, how can trade contribute to getting us there? I think we have to be very clear. When it comes to the challenges we face today, whether it's on economic or social exclusion, whether it is on environmental protection, or whether it's on governing the digital economy, the trading system can be a part of the solution. Actually, I would say it must ensure it is part of the solution. Trade, we've heard it this morning, has played a key role in the structural transformation process that is at the heart of economic development. This transformation is about shifting resources and people out of subsistence activities into work that is more productive. Over the past 40 years, many of your countries were able to grow much faster than they would have otherwise had by just being open to using trade as a route to grow. And as a result, millions of people exited poverty. This trade-led development was enabled because there was a predictable open market at the global level. There was a rules-based multilateral trading system that allowed countries to diversify their economies and diversify export baskets. Businesses could invest in moving up the value chain. Businesses could invest in new sectors and be relatively confident that the unexpected trade barriers were not among the risks they were going to face. Of course, not every country was able to seize the opportunities presented by trade. Many developing countries still remain reliant on a single export product, making their economies extremely reliant and vulnerable to price volatility, to political violence, or to the impact of climate change. This is what we have seen with many, for example, small islands that are reliant on tourism but are at the forefront of the impact of climate change. Particularly among least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, fragile states, too many have remained on the margins of the global economy, exporting raw commodities, if anything at all. This is why this Aid for Trade initiative was set up in 2005. Even in countries that have been more successful at tapping into global markets, the gains of trade have not been widely shared. This is why it matters that we help connect micro, small and medium enterprises to international value chains. When they thrive, the benefits of trade, the benefits of growth are spread across society. This is why investing in the competitiveness of micro, small and medium enterprises is at the heart of what the ITC is about. This trade-led development today faces two serious challenges. Challenge number one, it's on the news every day. The open global economy is under threat. trade restrictions are growing. The very notion of a rules-based cooperation on trade has come under sustained political pressure. And with this, we risk fragmenting markets. An unsupportive global economic environment is going to make it much harder, if not impossible, for marginalized countries to generate jobs and end extreme poverty by 2030. We just simply risk missing the Sustainable Development Goals. The second challenge maybe gets a little less attention in the news, but could be even more profound. This is that technology is changing the way structural transformation works today. Once it was about moving workers from farms into factories. Then it was about fragmenting factories into multi-country value chains with component production, processing and assembly located wherever it could be done most competitively. Now, sophisticated machines mean that factories don't need as many workers as they once did. Industry is today less labor intensive. The market case for locating production in developing countries is also shifting. In response to the first challenge, we must continue to make the case for open markets. And open markets within a framework of global rules. They, meaning you, have to invest in creating these rules in the World Trade Organization. Whether these rules are for fish subsidies, whether these rules are for electronic commerce, whether these rules are about investment facilitation, they have to be produced also here. To the second challenge, we must respond by promoting greater value addition across the board, in agriculture, in industry, in services. On both these challenges, we must ensure that the gains from trade and value addition are socially inclusive. MSMEs are an important part of this, as is a smarter social safety nets. But it's also supporting women in trade by correcting the policy and market failures that keep women outside of mainstream economics. It's not just about talking about women's economic empowerment to feel good. It's about acting smart. Governments, private sector, civil society all need to act to empower women as economic equals. This is what delivers in real term growth and equity. And when you do this, you get amazing results. And I wanted to bring you an example of what this amazing result is. The first chocolate bar produced with cocoa beans produced by Liberian women. Amazing returns for these small farmers in Liberia. Great deal for you because the chocolate is delicious. I've got a bag full of them if you want for later in the day. So how can the trade community help in this women's economic empowerment? First, by creating a conducive environment at home. This is why we have created She Trades Outlook, a dashboard with over 90 indicators to help governments understand where they've got levers to create a better conducive environment. But it's also with the trade policy community. This house is about non-discrimination. Non-discrimination between national and foreigners, not discrimination among foreigners. It should be about non-discrimination between men and women in trade. This is where I hope MC12 could take a concrete forward step from the Buenos Aires Declaration. That was a beginning. It should not be the end. But it's also by investing resources in aid for trade, which is what we should be discussing this week, and by changing stereotypes. We want to contribute to changing stereotypes. I get the question very often. We don't see many women active in the area of the global economic governance, okay? So we don't want this question to come again. We are putting out a book authored by 28 women from all across the world. Many will be well known to you, launched tomorrow. Hopefully we'll see you at 11 o'clock so that we know where to find the women. It has never been a better moment to be a young entrepreneur than today. And yet, skills mismatch and lack of access to affordable finance prevents many of these youth from thriving in trade. This is what our contribution in the Aid for Trade at a glance shows. This is the youth empowerment, another area, in my view, for focus by the Aid for Trade community. Let me end. My favorite, all-time favorite Indian, Amartya Sen, famously argued that development is really about giving people opportunities to use their capabilities. When you empower a young woman entrepreneur to connect to trade, when you help make it possible for a young startup to expand into neighboring countries, it does more than create jobs. It enables people to pursue their aspiration and capitalize on their abilities. And this is why we're here this week. This is why it matters that all of you, all of us, keep investing in Aid for Trade. Thank you to the WTO. Thank you, Roberto, for bringing us together, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you, Arantxa. And now, if we could hear from Hani Salem Sonbol, the CEO of the International Islamic Trade Finance Corporation. His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Cambodia, Excellency Roberto Azevedo, Director General WTO, Excellencies, heads of institutions, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is really an honor on behalf of the Islamic Development Bank Group to be here today and join you in this very important meeting. We are gathering here today for really not only to review the efforts, but also actually to look into the challenges that were actually mentioned in the world. And every time we come here, actually we find new challenges on the list. ITFC, the International Islamic Trade Finance Cooperation, a member of the IDB Group, we call it the trade arm of IDB Group, was very keen also to attend since the first edition of this Aid for Trade Global Review, and we are very honored to continue to do so. I would like really also to congratulate the WTO and OECD for the excellent really publications on the Aid for Trade at a glance. This is a great work, and we have also noticed over the years how this really publications is becoming very, very important for organizations like ITFC. I would like also to commend the efforts done by WTO and OECD in other areas, and ITC, UNCTAD, and other really important institutions to really face the challenges of trade, and also to serve really the international trade system for really an objective that we all share to achieve our sustainable development goals. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am confident that this 7th edition will also be a great success in too many ways, and ITFC will spare no efforts actually to ensure that this happens. We are really going to be engaged in so many activities in the coming 2 days in this very important gathering. We are having this afternoon the heads of institutions to discuss actually the status of trade, and also the ways and means of really how to enhance our cooperation together to meet really the trade challenges that were mentioned today, and also look at the biggest now also challenge. This is the trade gap challenge, which ranges in the tone of 1.5 trillion US dollar, and in the same time tackle the challenges that mentioned, talking about the digital gaps that we are now facing in the world, and of course environment issues, and in general we are meeting to really see how we can really improve the trading system in general. ITFC will continue to grow in developing
and inventing solutions and new solutions to serve its member countries. And every year we come here, we bring new things to you and say that this is what we have been doing actually with our partners in the last 2 years, in addition to, of course, the normal work of trade finance that the ITFC is undertaking. So in addition actually to the almost now $50 billion which were approved for for trade transactions in the last 10 years, by the way, this will bring the total of the trade finance since the inception of IDB Group to almost now $80 billion. In addition to that, ITFC was really working very hard in last years to really mobilize resources for trade finance and trade development. We think that this 30 billion which was actually mobilized from the markets to serve trade finance and trade development was a significant achievement by ITFC. And also we thank all our partners, whether financial institutions, development institutions, who have really their confidence in ITFC to do so. In addition to that, ITFC really was trying to diversify this type of really resource mobilization in the last years by actually looking at how we can untap the non-traditional trade finance investors in an effort to reduce also the gap and also work more in helping member countries. So what we did is actually we have launched in the last year the ITFC Sovereign Energy Fund, ISEF, and we are actually very happy to say that we are now about to really start deploying the capital for trade finance and trade development purposes. In the area of technical assistance, and I agree that, as we said by...
តាមដានទស្សនាប្រសាសន៍ដ៏ថ្លៃថ្លារបស់សមាជិកនាយករដ្ឋមន្ត្រីថ្លែងនៅក្នុងកិច្ចប្រជុំត្រួតពិនិត្យឡើងវិញជាសកលលើជំនួយសម្រាប់ពាណិជ្ជកម្មឆ្នាំ 2019 ហើយខ្ញុំបាទក៏សូមបញ្ជាក់ផងដែរថានៅវេលាម៉ោង 11 យប់ ថ្ងៃទី 3 ខែកក្កដាឆ្នាំ 2019 នេះប្រទេសកម្ពុជាได้ធ្វើការផ្សាយបន្តពិសេសមួយទៀតគឺសកម្មភាពសមាជិកនាយករដ្ឋមន្ត្រីអញ្ជើញថ្លែងសន្ទរកថានៅក្នុងកិច្ចប្រជុំទៀងទាត់លើកទី 41 នៃក្រុមប្រឹក្សាសិទ្ធិមនុស្សអង្គការសហប្រជាជាតិអាសារីសូមទូរទស្សនិកជនរងចាំតាមដានទស្សនាដោយមន្ត្រីនៅវេលាម៉ោង 11 យប់នេះតែម្ដងទូរទស្សនិកជនជាទីគោរពកម្មវិធីផ្សាយបន្តពិសេសពីសកម្មភាពសមាជិកនាយករដ្ឋមន្ត្រីនៅឯប្រទេសស្វីសដែលទូរទស្សនិកជនបានតាមដានទស្សនាពេលនេះចប់តែប៉ុណ្ណេះហើយជាបន្តសូមជម្រាបតាមដានទស្សនាកម្មវិធីផ្សាយជាបន្តបន្ទាប់នៅឯស្ថានីយកណ្ដាលសម្រាប់ពេលនេះខ្ញុំបាទព្រមទាំងក្រុមការងារផ្សាយផ្ទាល់